Welcome back to Spellbound. I'm BEEJ and I read some amazing books in January. I've talked about some of them already in some other videos, but I haven't talked about these books yet. And these books are all 5 stars. If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, published in 2017 by Flatiron Books, which is an imprint of Macmillan. Instant new favorite book of all time. So first of all, I love this book. Clearly. I read it last month during the weekend that my dad was having his cancer surgery, and you'd think that I would have wanted to read something very light and fluffy during what was in fact a pretty difficult time. But actually, the fact that this book was so dark and intense and dramatic made it like such a cool literary black hole that I just got sucked into during the reading breaks that I had at the hospital. So I love that I had this book at the time that I had it, but also, this book is amazing, and it would have been amazing at any point that I decided to pick it up because this book is so good. But you have to like Shakespeare to like this book. It's like a rule. You have to. Let me explain. So this story is narrated by Oliver, and he's about to be released from prison. And he's narrating this story to the detective who was the acting detective on the case that this story is about. So he flashes back to the story that happened 10 years ago in the late 90s at a pretty prestigious arts college with a very prestigious theater arts program. So like the senior class of this theater arts program is a total of 7 students because you get eliminated as you go. That's how cutthroat this school is. So already dark academia. Perfection. So Oliver begins this story, I think in a neat way, kind of describing the 7 of them by using their typecasts and the types of characters that they usually end up playing. So you meet the characters by which one of them is the ingenue, the leading hero, the comedic best friend, the trickster, the villain, the cross-dressing support role. Like, you get it. This story starts the day before the first day of the fall semester. So as he says, right before everything goes wrong. And they're talking about which character they want when they audition for the autumn play. And some of them want to break out of their typecasts. And so that kind of immediately sets a bit of an unsettled edge because you think you kind of have these characters figured out, but they all want to be a different role. Because all of the plays are Shakespearean at this theater. It's always a Shakespearean play. So the autumn play at this theater is Julius Caesar, and the spring production is King Lear. So the story begins to unfold kind of like Julius Caesar. Like, you as a reader know in your gut pretty early on what you think is going to happen. Like, what you think the main case is going to be about, what the detective was initially there to investigate. Because there's one character who's behaving kind of strangely, and he's the one playing Julius Caesar. And he starts acting pretty intensely and strangely and being really interested in the reflexes of his own power, his power in the group, his power in the school, etc. You see where I'm going with this. And the beats match up pretty well to the original Shakespearean play of Julius Caesar. But what doesn't match up, what you're still wondering, are the characters. Who is which character? If it's matching up to Julius Caesar, who is whom? There are 5 acts to this book, but each act follows the beats, the actual beats, of a different Shakespearean play. So there's Julius Caesar, obviously, but there's also Macbeth, King Lear, Hamlet, and Romeo and Juliet. So this story is laid out brilliantly, but not only is the story structure Shakespearean, the dialogue is too. So the dialogue in this book weaves in and out between like regular, contemporary, normal, everyday dialogue and actual Shakespearean lines. And also, not just Shakespearean lines and expressions, but in some instances, entire monologues, which not only helps dramatize these moments, which are already highly dramatic, but it also helps underscore the emotional states of our characters. You're on the edge of your seat through the whole book anyway, okay? And it keeps you on the edge of your seat because even what would be normal and mundane moments are somehow like that high violin chord that's like slightly unsettling. And it's because sometimes they just bust out in Shakespearean dialogue. But other times, like these dark and brooding monologues, they help underscore the character's emotional state in that moment as the story actually does get more dramatic based on what has happened. And if that sounds pretentious and ridiculous, it's because it is. Yes, this book is dark academia, but it's also about theater kids. These college seniors are so far up their own asses they can't see daylight, and it's fantastic and so much fun to watch them wax poetic about their very grave circumstances because they literally do not know how to express themselves any differently because they have been intensely studying Shakespeare for 4 very long years. And they're also like quintessential theater kids, which thanks to TikTok, we all know are like cringe and self-important, but also undeniably ruthless. And if you know theater kids, then like, yeah, that checks out. Obviously, I loved this book. I loved it so much. Instant new favorite. And I want to read it again, but with like 10 different No Fear Shakespeares, just like all at the same time. Queenie by Carty-Williams, published in 2019 by Gallery Scout Press, an imprint of Simon & Schuster. Queenie is a literary fiction novel about a Black woman named Queenie living in England. And the story begins with her long-term boyfriend breaking up with her and then chronicles her mental health sort of steadily spiral into a descent. Now, I say that, but this book is actually pretty funny. Or more specifically, Queenie and how she narrates her story is pretty funny. So Queenie is the granddaughter of immigrants from the Caribbean, so this book also has some pretty rich undertones and elements of generational trauma, family expectations, racism, immigration, and also the uniqueness of subcultures within your own city. So what's interesting to me is that while I was reading this book, or more specifically listening to this book because I got this one on audiobook from my library, that the tone and the humor of this book sounded so much like a Black grown-up version of Angus Songs and Full Frontal Snogging. You know, the book, I think Nickelodeon Pictures made a video. Nickelodeon made a movie of it in like 2008. 2007, 2008, and it was like a really big deal when I was in middle school. Like my best friends read it. Yeah, it just has this really unique humor, and our main character acts so much like the main character from Angus Songs and Full Frontal Snogging, and that she just has this very clueless as to what's going on in front of her kind of way that our main character was very reminiscent of Georgia. And so I just kind of enjoyed that tone through the whole thing. But then at one point, Queenie herself even mentions Angus Songs and Full Frontal Snogging, and I was like, I knew it. So that was like a really fun little homage, you know? 5 stars. This book is so, so good, and I highly recommend it. When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. Published 2022 by Anchor, an imprint of Not Doubleday, an imprint of Penguin Random House. It is a speculative fiction novel, a literary speculative fiction novel about the Great Dragoning of 1955, in which women suddenly and spontaneously turned into dragons and flew away. The story is told through flashback from the perspective of Alex, who is a young girl at the time of the dragoning. She describes her life before and after the dragoning and what it was like growing up in the aftermath. But the story chapters are also interspersed with like research records and transcripts from court cases in which a doctor is asking the government to unseal different records indicating previous dragoning instances. So we learn throughout the book that actually this phenomenon of women just turning into dragons has actually happened throughout history, but nobody knows how or why because it's like forbidden to study. You can't talk about it or learn about it. But also nobody knows why specifically in 1955 there was such a mass dragoning. So this story is obviously about women and the environment and the culture that you create when you refuse to talk about phenomena that's specifically and uniquely related to women. So the way that this book, the way that the characters and the culture of this book talk about the dragoning, or they don't actually, so the way that they don't talk about it is similar to how you would imagine that people would not talk about menstruation or periods in like the 1950s. So it's considered uncouth and vulgar and impolite, and it's simply not done. So girls and women were intentionally misinformed about their own bodies and their own nature, and that's the point of this book. But at its core, this book is a story about fierce feminine rage and the collective trauma that we all experience when women are silenced from saying things out loud and speaking their truth. And this book was inspired by and dedicated to the testimony of Christine Blasey Ford and the incredible bravery that it took to tell the truth and share her experience. Now, I loved this book. I did. I loved this book. It's beautiful and intelligent and literary and slightly whimsical, but still deeply guttural. But there's one thing that I didn't love. It's very white. So there's no mention of intersectionality or the way that this environment in this very thinly veiled allegory for our current cultural experience would affect women of color differently. And so that to me is a huge miss, especially in 2022 when this book was published. Like we're better than that, you know? And feminism without intersectionality just isn't the whole story. Because the things that white women fear, basically every episode of The Handmaid's Tale, is already and has already been a lived experience of Black women and women of color, not only around the world, but right here in the United States. So for that to be very absent from this book felt pretty off to me, and it was a big miss. Still, I think that this book is very good. I think that it's very powerful. 5 stars, and I highly recommend it. So what about you? Did you read any 5-star books in January? Let me know below. And if you didn't, or you just want to let me know that you reached this point in the video, then leave a little skull emoji because Shakespeare, and we love a good skull. Anyway, thanks so much for sticking around. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you loved it, hit subscribe. And as always, happy reading and many more 5 stars in your future.